Coming into work on the weekend, being the only person there, can be quite peaceful, particularly when you're a loner. Hey, and welcome to this video. This is episode 27 now of my video series where I chat for about 10 minutes, more or less, every day for 30 days, just to practice speaking. It's unedited and unscripted. And today's topic, since I'm at work, like rarely for a weekend, I'd like to talk about being a scientist, because I am a scientist. Being a scientist, is it a good career or job type for a person who lives the loner lifestyle, who is a loner? Or perhaps anyone, perhaps I can inspire anyone to consider science as a career path. So, I've been working as a scientist for almost 10 years now. I went to university the most recent time, so I've been a few times, to study science, and I work in a science field. I was initially going to do this as a perhaps day in the life video, since there's not really anyone around to stop me at the moment, just filming things and chatting every now and then. But number one, that's kind of outside of the scope of this series, and number two, I think it would be incredibly difficult to do this without very obviously giving away who I am, and that's not really my intention at the moment, but there are some things I can still talk about. So science is actually a very diverse career choice, when you work as a scientist, that is. Ultimately, you will be doing just very similar things, perhaps, once you get into it. It's not all just like groundbreaking research all the time. So, let's say a young person who's thinking about science, they might think you're just constantly working in a lab, doing experiments, making grand discoveries, but unfortunately, it's nowhere near as exciting as that. And I will say, actually, it's very similar just to any mundane job once you get started with it, once you get into the flow of things. So once you've been trained up at whatever particular task you're doing, you're just doing that either day in and day out, although there is a lot of diversity in the kind of things you'll be getting up to, I suppose. So the job I work in, I'm very free to actually come up with what I'm planning on doing in general. So, there's no regular day, I suppose, in that respect. I'll have assignments, things I need to get done, but also I've got a lot of free time to get on with things that I find interesting, as long as I'm not wasting too much money, in an obvious way from the organisation I work for. So what areas of science can you get involved in? So there is, of course, research, which is, I guess you have to be very committed to a particular topic and a particular area of science to succeed in research and thrive in it. Because unfortunately, it's quite an unstable career path, in the sense that a lot of the time it's not a long-term job. You'll have a contract for a period of time, like perhaps 2 years, and then you've got to apply for a new one elsewhere, because it's all based on funding. You could work in, let's say, a more stable job, so academia perhaps, so as an academic teaching. Now, I understand in some countries this is getting much more difficult to do, so they're hiring more hourly paid lecturers and so on and so forth, hourly paid scientists almost. But from what I've seen, this hasn't really caught on so far in the UK. Usually you're employed, I guess, on a permanent contract, and as long as you're doing research and fulfilling your teaching obligations, then, you're set up for until they close down the department. So it's become quite common in the UK that, let's say chemistry departments or some other less popular science departments are closing down. Fortunately, the area I work in, so I work in an area of forensic science, so toxicology, that's weirdly thriving. One of the benefits is there's always people interested in forensic science and CSI, all that stuff, thanks to, let's say, television shows, stories, true crime, all that kind of thing people are interested in. I'd say chemistry was there was a lot of interest in chemistry a few years back when Breaking Bad was a popular television show, but I'm not sure there's anything similar that's replaced it. Like, maybe there has been, but it's not as culturally popular as this Breaking Bad show. Maybe this is my biased opinion towards it, but I think that had a lot of impact on what young people wanted to do. What else is there? So you can work in a research organization, a contract research organization or something along those lines, whereby you're just, let's say, people will send samples to you and you have to perform analysis on them. Or you could work in healthcare, like that's another example. So you're just operating the various machines that the hospitals use. So this could be some sort of blood analyzer. You could be making slides of patient samples, growing up microorganisms from their samples, which sounds like an absolutely miserable job. But yeah, it's a very diverse field in terms of the kind of things you can get into. And while I'd say, unfortunately, it is quite difficult to just get that first job, once you have some experience working in science, it's fairly simple to get a second job if, let's say, you get made redundant, which is one of my current fears. I think I'll be okay for a couple of years, but as things are going, maybe I'll have the old, redundancy package in a few years and I've got to find a new job. I'll have to live the van life that I was romanticizing about a few episodes back. But yeah, science is a very diverse job, and if you are interested in a particular area of science or some aspect of science, then it can be quite rewarding compared with, say, like customer service or, even like banking or finance. Like perhaps some people are interested in updating Excel spreadsheets and dealing with angry customers. But I would say that for a lot of people working in these areas, it's more of a necessity than a choice. Although I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'd love to have a little customer service job on the side so I can, one that I'm not relying on, so that if a customer does annoy me too much, I can give them a load of grief and be like, yeah, I'm not doing this anymore. One aspect of science, though, that is a bit unfortunate is that the pay isn't amazing. So it's not like a finance where you can get massive bonuses, that sort of thing. Unless you work in sales, it's quite a poor career path in terms of, let's say, the money you can make. So unless you're, let's say, some high-level professor, and even then, I wouldn't say the money's amazing for the amount of your life you have to commit into this. So you have to get PhDs, research grants, constant paper publications, that sort of thing, climb the ladder over decades of your life, and maybe you'll finish on 60, 70 grand in terms of, so that might be the equivalent of around 100 grand in the US or $100,000 a year. And this is the UK, of course. I understand in the US, salaries are a lot higher. But yeah, the whole point of this was to talk about whether it's a good career for a loner. And I would say it depends. It's just like any regular job in a lot of respects, in that you will always be dealing with other people. There will always be some sort of customer in some respects. It won't necessarily be a member of the public. So let's say there's not going to be random people popping in asking for you to do some science. There will be customers you have to deal with in a professional manner. So you can't just give them a load of grief or ignore them, because you're representing your company or organization. So this could be, let's say you're working for a toxicology lab. This could be the police or someone else sending off samples to you, like private investigators, perhaps, if that's a thing. I'm not too familiar with that. You do sometimes get some nutters who, we had one actually, where one person was convinced their cat had been poisoned, and they kept sending in samples and giving us money to analyze their samples from their cat, and the cat hadn't been poisoned basically. And eventually we had to let them down and be like, look, we don't think the cat has been poisoned based upon what we've seen. That doesn't say that it hasn't been, but we can't find any evidence. Perhaps we'd recommend another company or some other avenue of looking into this. So you do get some interesting characters, and again, you have to deal with them diplomatically. So you're not going to be just in a lab, in silence, like I am today. Okay, perhaps today's not a great example, but most of the time you won't just be by yourself in a lab working on things like you might see in television shows. I believe there's a show called NCIS or NCSI or Navy CSI where there's this goth forensic science lab girl, and perhaps some people get the impression that that's what it's like, and maybe a lot of people I know who've done, let's say, forensic science degrees got involved because they saw this kind of show, had this idea of that sort of lifestyle out of being a scientist. But I'll say for the most part it's not like that. And scientists in general, I think I've gone over this loads of times, but they're just regular people. It's almost like, I find a lot of the times, those day in the life videos for working at Google, that sort of thing that used to be popular. I'll come to work, everyone's just banging on about the drama in their life, the kind of mundane things they get up to, but they're somehow able to tell multiple hour-long stories of this particular very specific thing in their life. They'll come in, chill on their computer, do online shopping, do the bare minimum in the lab, that sort of thing. So the kind of people you work with are just going to be regular people. There's going to be squabbles and bickering. But the upside is quite often you get time to do things that you're interested in, things to work on that you're interested in. And personally, I quite enjoy, adopting and embracing and researching new technologies and such. That is something that is very uncommon amongst older scientists, or scientists in general I've found that I work with, who even are younger than me, in that once they've got the job, they feel as though they've done their bit when it comes to learning and education and learning new things. They just want to get on with things, go home and experience their various life drama. So, man, what am I talking about now? This is getting into be a bit of a rambling video. I need to get to work soon, but fortunately I'll be just by myself for most of the day. Would I recommend this job? If you're interested in science, then I would say, or any aspect of science, I would say it's a really good career path in that respect. The thing I find is it's very low pressure in terms of what I have to do. Of course you get stressful days sometimes, but because I'm working on things that I am interested in personally, it makes it a lot more bearable. So that was my video for today. I'm coming up towards the end of this series soon, and I need to actually start thinking about making other videos, what I'm going to make afterwards. Perhaps making some review videos at the end, but we shall see. Oh, and I've stopped with the AI topic generation at the moment. I found those a bit stressful, but I think there's a lot of opportunity for them. I think I was just using the various prompts and such wrong, and it's something I'm definitely going to use for my, how would I describe it, my tutorial for doing your own series this way in the future. At least my first iteration of it. I think it was absolutely brilliant to try out. Should have just tried it earlier. But yep, thanks for listening to my rambly video, and I shall see you tomorrow.